Hey, Raindrops. On today's episode of Reality with the King, we are going to talk about the best show that is out right now. When I say to you, Raindrops, I am obsessed with this show. And I
Me
know
too.
you guys are too. So, what better way to kick off my weekly, yes, you heard that right, my weekly recap of the Valley? We're going to kick things off with the man, the myth, the messy legend, who I am also obsessed with. Give it up, y'all, for Jesse.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. Spencer speaks very highly of you, and I know that you have a very deep background in this world. So my real question is, how am I doing so far?
Oh, I mean, I may get in trouble for saying this, and I do not like getting in trouble, but I mean, Jesse, you keep the party going, my brother. Like, you. Now, listen, without Jesse, like, what would be happening? But I would like to ask you one personal request.
Sure.
Can I be the 23rd person in the boys group chat?
Well, sadly with the boys chat, regardless of what you hear, it started off a little dicey back when I first was indoctrinated into this chat. And now, to be honest with you, some of the biggest playboys on the chat are sober, and it's a lot of memes. It's a lot of one of the guys on the boys chat this morning, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this. Told Jax to do some grounding and take his shoes off and go walk in the grass. So we've evolved over time into more of a therapy session. Most of us are now married. So while we would love to have you, we are currently full and taking waiting list applications.
Oh my God, it feels like Ray a dating app because I am still on the waiting list. And I'm like, I'm Carlos King. I know
Hey,
people who are like already in there. So I'm on a waiting list for the boys chat. Got it.
listen. I tried to get into Soho House in 2017, and I still haven't heard from them. So you and I both. I don't know if the Valley is going to help or hurt me get into Soho House. So we'll see. I might have to throw in a new application. And like the last one, I said I was a poet. So maybe that's why I didn't get in. I don't know.
Well, I will give you a referral because I'm a member.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, no. We'll make that happen. So I'm not only a member of Soho House, I'm a member of the Valley. I used to live in Studio City, which is in close proximity to the Valley. I
Right.
have to say, season 2 is starting off amazing. And I just want to get right into it, Jesse.
Okay.
Obviously, we know that you are going through this, divorce with Michelle. And what we
Yeah.
saw in the premiere episode was the two of you sort of navigating this life of co-parenting. And what we're seeing this season is the fact that you two are not, as of episode 3, you
Yeah.
two are not on the same page as relates to your relationship. But I want to go backwards a little bit. Um, Michelle's gorgeous, and I know at one point in time you two were madly in love. What would you say was the number one cause of you and Michelle's relationship not working out?
I think in my experience, I feel like having a child. We had Isabella April of 2020. All of those classes, like how to change diapers, all canceled at Cedars-Sinai. We went into the hospital that morning, and we were told by our doctor, which comes up quite a bit, not to go to the hospital because they're going to send you away if you're not ready to be admitted. And, a lot of first time parents get a little nervous, and we waited and waited and waited. She was on the phone all night with her sister in labor. And we went to the hospital, and they actually did a COVID test at the elevators of the parking garage for both of us, sent me back to the car, took her up the elevator, did another test, then called me 45 minutes later. And they're like, all right, the time is now. And I walked from my car back to the elevator, and they did another COVID test. So it was chaotic. We had Isabella at 1 a.m. and they made me leave after 20 minutes with her. From that point on, it was just all a new world for all of us. And, there was no grandma, grandpa. I thought I was getting lasagnas and all kinds of stuff sent to the house, from people. There was none of that. There was no help. There was no nothing. So really for the first 4 months of Isabella's life, it was Michelle and I in the house with no help, no sleep. And we did our best. And I think there is sort of an isolation that happened for everybody. But then Michelle and I had discussed Michelle and I were business partners, and she was taking care of Isabella. So I went back to work. And while everybody else felt isolated in this crazy world that we were living in, Michelle was even, isolated to a 100th degree. And I think that started putting a lot of pressure on, on the entire relationship. You know what I mean? And it was difficult to navigate that world. And if you were to ask me, I think that was the start of our problems. It's like we couldn't have grandma come take the baby so we could have a date night. Like we weren't, nobody was having date nights. You know what I mean? So I think that was really the start.
Do you really believe Michelle cheated on you?
I do. Yes. Michelle actually admitted to me that she did. I don't believe that it was Aaron. I've had long conversations with Aaron about this, and you'll see that play out in this season. But even off camera, I've had conversations with Michelle and Aaron. And Michelle did say that she had a situation a couple years ago with somebody. But I also felt like, Aaron saying multiple times and, them talking about it on Michelle's podcast that they used to meet up and, there's all different types of affairs, right? There's the physical affair that Michelle admitted to, but also there's this emotional component where, Aaron and Michelle talked about, meeting up and having conversations about relationships and stuff like that. And it basically put a direct comparison between Michelle's relationship with me and what it would be like with a relationship with Aaron. So whether it was physical or not, there's that emotional component that I think, and look, was it my fault for driving her away? Yeah. Was it her fault for finding solace in the arms or the mind of somebody else? Yeah. But, at this point, she's super happy. They live together now. Isabella loves it over there. She loves him. And, at the end of the day, we are doing this right now, but there's going to be a point, and I've tried a few times, that we will all be friends at some point. You know what I mean? And I wish them the best. She's very happy. He's a lot different than me. So yes, I think she cheated. Does it matter now? No.
Well, it's interesting you say that he's a lot different than you because in the first episode, Michelle did say she never had the feeling of you being a genuine person with heart, which that was a gut punch to me. So as you guys were married. So obviously she loved you enough to marry you. You are the father of your beautiful daughter. To hear your soon to be ex-wife say that she never had the feeling you were a genuine person with heart, well, did that hurt you to hear her say that?
Yeah, but you know what? She's hurt right now and she's hurting and she's going through something not only with our relationship, but the passing of her mother, which was difficult, for her and the family and stuff like that. It was difficult for Isabella. She's struggling and, I get where she's coming from because when you go through the situation, you go through a divorce and separation, rarely do you remember the good times. You only remember the worst possible times and you remember it in the emotional state that you're in at that moment. Right. And right now we are butting heads and she's trying to win and then I'm trying to win. And then it's like this, right? One after another after another. And, for her to say that I wasn't genuine, I love to tell the story. She had never been to Europe and I take her to Mastro's for her birthday for our anniversary. And her birthday was a few weeks later. And I hand her a card and it's plane tickets to Paris. And she told me a story that a couple months prior, we were in Capri. And she said she cried on the flight home. And she bought a dress for every night because she knows I love Capri. She thought I was going to propose. She didn't know that I had a ring for 6 months, wanted to take her to Paris, which was her dream, gave her the tickets to Paris, set the whole thing up with Ritz Paris way ahead of time. it was her birthday celebration. So we celebrated her birthday. The next day I proposed at Ritz Paris. So if she says that, I was never genuine and never, loving, I fail to believe that that's, it just isn't true. But she's in this state right now where she only remembers the bad.
Uh, okay, so Jesse, I don't feel bad anymore because listen, you're I find you very likable, right? I could be the minority of the situation, but we'll get to the Watch What Happens poll in a second, where it was like, are you Team Michelle or Team Jesse? Spoiler alert, Jesse won. But I will say, I find you very likable.
Thank
So
you.
the fact that I heard that story, look, you have done some asshole things, right? And listen, I do feel like you own up to it. You owned up to being a whore back in the day. You know what I mean? I do feel like you own up to your shit. So
Yeah.
I will give you that. When I watch you on the show, I feel like you're somebody that loves hard. And I do feel like Michelle is hurt. And I like Michelle a lot too. And when you talk about how you two are butting heads, what my experience is for producing reality television is hurt people hurt each other. And I do feel like there is something genuine about you that makes you very likable to the audience, to the point where you won the poll. And you also won, the place of the girls in this most recent episode, to where she's like, I mean, we're going on this trip. I mean, like, whose side are you on? And low key, they're on your side. So, do you feel like this show, unfortunately, dealing with your marital woes, do you feel like it has villainized your character?
I mean, look, you love hard, you fall hard, right? You just said it. I love and I'm loyal and like almost to a fault, right? So you love hard, you fall hard, and this season of the show, I was very, I don't know how to be inauthentic, and I think I was very authentic, and I think it resonated with people towards the end of season one. And I continued to do a lot of work after Michelle and I separated. And, Michelle asked me to make a lot of changes and I didn't do what she needed me to do. And, then I thought like, well, should I change for Isabella? And then I figured, why don't I start working on myself? And if I can even grow 5%, 7%, and I started to reflect on those things. And it's one of the reasons why Kristen and I have become so close and why we were able to, have that conversation at my house at the beginning of season two, is because you start to reflect on, when you decide to make the changes on your own, that's when it becomes true. Like I couldn't make it for Michelle because I didn't want to. Then I decided to make it, on my own. And yeah, look, 5% of growth is nothing. So I'm still going to be that Jesse with the crass, sarcastic humor that doesn't fly all the time. I have a real lack of self-awareness. I have a real lack of social situations. You can crack a joke to one person that'll laugh and the other person will, slap you in the face. Right. So it's all about continuing the work.
Well, look, you are doing the work. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, you've been in this world a long time, right? You can't be the villain without being the hero, and you can't be the hero without being the villain, because excuse me, people respond to the arc, right? So one day you're going to be good, one day you're going to be bad. And I think you'll see in season two, I get real bad and then I get good and then I get bad. And I think, the amazing part of this show, and especially this season, is you'll see the villain and hero in almost every single person in our group.
If you had to say, when you look at the overall season, obviously you taped it, and I know you guys are about to film a reunion. Who would you say is the ultimate villain this season, and who is the ultimate hero this season?
I will tell you that I think by the end of the season, you will see that everybody gets resolution. So like I said, there's a villain and hero, but and look, we still spend a lot of time together. I was on the phone with Jason, and then Janet jumped on for an hour the other night. I was on the phone with Jax this morning for 30 minutes. I talked to Jasmine for hours. I talked to Kristen and Luke. And, I think you'll see ups and downs and lefts and rights, but you'll finally see resolution where I wouldn't be surprised if it ends with ... to be continued, because there's a lot of surprises. There's a lot of fun. And look, we got babies coming. We got weddings coming. Eventually, whether it ends with resolution, it will get there.
So you talk about speaking to Jax this morning. What we did see in last week's episode was a very powerful scene where, he and Brittany spoke about his addiction and him checking himself into rehab. You spoke to him today for 30 minutes. How is Jax doing?
Jax he's doing really well. And, I reminded him today that, this world, right? You live it, you film it, then you have to live it again 8-9 months later, right? And we talk quite a bit about, things that we see on the show and comments that are made and stuff like that. And I reminded Jax this morning, you are not the same person you were 9 months ago. You are 180 days or 160 days sober. You are 35 pounds of solid muscle. The guy only eats chicken breast and hamburger patties every day, all day. So I'm like, just remember who you are today, because it's different than you were 9 months ago. And just start today and grow, every day. Like when he went into that facility the first time, he came out with just a few tools. And the work wasn't in the facility. The work was getting the tools to continue the work. And unfortunately for Jax, I knew he was doing the work in terms of his mental health, but his physical health, the drinking, the drugs, was the reason he recognized it, because mentally he was strong. He recognized that after another month or two that he needed to go into rehab for drugs and alcohol. And now coming out of that second rehab and, doing the work by going to AA meetings and doing the work by continuing, talking to me and talking to his friends and stuff like that, I really think he has an opportunity to become Jason Couchy instead of Jax Taylor.
That's a powerful statement.
That's what I ended the conversation with this morning.
Well, your ex has said in this most recent episode that you are far worse than Jax. Jax has been seen as somebody that, supposedly, is verbally mean to Brittany, fat shames her allegedly. He has denied it. A lot of people have said they've seen the text messages and they've seen what he's done. Jax is a polarizing figure, but he also has receipts based on, the shows he's been on where his behavior isn't the most peachy keen. So based on all of that narrative prior to your conversation today, when your ex-wife said that you are far more worse than Jax, how did you feel about that comment?
It's Michelle's experience, right? What she's referring to, like, I don't know, but Michelle's experience, what Michelle's going through might feel or seem worse than what Brittany's going through, what anybody going through a divorce or having a partner. I think it just comes down to everybody's individual experience, right? And Michelle, like I said, she's hurting. And what her experience is like, look, I know my faults. I know that I can be condescending. Michelle and I worked together, and there wasn't a hierarchy in our business. But again, it's like when you're fighting over a deal, sometimes it's hard to meet up in the kitchen and give her a hug and a kiss. You know what I mean? So it's all in the experience for anybody. So whatever Michelle says about me, again, it's her own experience, and I can't invalidate that experience. I can only trust my experience.
She said that you don't provide any financial support.
She did multiple times, I think.
Yeah. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't love to talk about, I wish Michelle felt the same way, to talk about personal and private financial matters. But I will say, and I've said it over and over again, Michelle and I were 50-50 business partners, and the real estate business as a whole in LA has been very bad for the last few years. But Michelle and I were 50-50 business partners. So if our business was hurting, we both share fault 50-50. And in terms of our finances, Michelle had 100% access to all of our accounts, from the credit union to the credit cards to the savings accounts, checking accounts. Michelle had access to all of that. So again, if there was spending and stuff like that, like, she had just as much of a fault as I did, because she had complete control over that. So, when she says things like that, it kind of hurts me, because yeah, there's no child support or alimony, because we were partners in our business, and we, split our commissions 50-50, and we, share custody 50-50. So we've moved forward. We have a custodial agreement that works for both of us. And in terms of that financial stuff, we are like this close to being able to move forward with our divorce, and and be able to create a life as co-parents.
One of the things that we are seeing this season is, look, first season, my brother, banger, explosive,
Yeah.
hallway craziness, right? With you in your suit. Um, you weren't playing any games, and we listen. The beauty of you to me is the fact that, is what you said. We can see you have moments of, having a villain moment, but we also see the hero. What we have seen this season that has shocked the hell out of all of us is the friendship that you have now with Kristen. Can you talk about, like, how you guys went from the craziness of last season to this season? My girl is coming over to your house, and you two are having a ponderosa.
I will tell you exactly how it happened. My girlfriend and my team missed our flight back from Watch What Happens Live, and we were sitting at the apartment in New York, and we were watching the episode, and I forget which episode it was. And I got the most gracious text from Kristen that was like, wow, I didn't know what you were going through. I understand. And I looked at it and I was like, Kristen just texted me. And from that point on, it was, again, it's like, you're working on yourself, you're working to grow. Like, what is my responsibility in what happened, right? And there was something, the scene at Jax's pool with all of us, it was kind of like the guys with the kids in season 1. I had a conversation with Luke that day about blind loyalty and how he was sticking up for Kristen. He didn't understand. And what I realized in the work is, I had blind loyalty for Michelle, and what Kristen was saying, it was so hurtful, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, am I missing something? And, I said to Kristen, and we've talked about it quite a bit, some of the work that I've been doing is like, I said it with her out back, is like that underlying idea that maybe she's right. And then it's like resent, anger, hostility. And my physical manifestation of that was like, like aggression. Like, I was a hockey player, right? And my physical manifestation of these feelings was banging my hands on tables and punching walls in the hallway and charging. I texted Zach a couple of days ago when I saw like another angle of that hallway scene, and I didn't realize that I gave him a forearm shiver into the wall on my way down to fight Luke. And I texted him like, dude, I am so sorry. Like, I never saw that angle before, and I didn't even know he was in the way. And yeah, you start to realize, you start to look at collateral damage and how you were the one who dropped the bomb. And you have to realize you're the one who dropped the bomb, right? So the collateral damage is not the problem, you're the problem. And Kristen and I have known each other for a long time, and that text message led to kind of a relationship with Luke, and we started working out together. And then it really has been incredible, the relationship that Kristen, Luke, and I have formed.
So, Jesse, we got to get into the most recent episode. This
Okay.
boys' chap was a massacre. Okay.
Again, you're on the waiting list, so don't ask about it again. All right. I just
No,
texted the boys right now.
No, it's fine. I don't want to be on it if it's going to be a disaster again. So I want you to clear the air. You have allegedly, unless you know, I do not want to put words in your mouth. So I want to be able to have you say it. Allegedly, you said in the group chat that your ex Michelle has slept with a billionaire for $1,500 a night. Before I move on, is that true that you said that?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Is it true that she did that?
I don't believe it's true, and I'll never make excuses for it. I literally will tell you, I'll be completely honest with you. I was triggered, and one of the things I'm working on is, and I talked to Kristen about it. When I'm triggered, I immediately, and I got it tattooed on my arm, emotion clouds reason. Emotion clouds reason. It's hard to see upside down and in a camera. But I get very reactive when I'm triggered, and I don't take that deep breath, and I don't say, okay, like, what situation am I in? I just get very, very reactive. And I was triggered by something that happened. I sent it. I immediately was like, I should unsend this. And now I have to pay the consequences of it. And it snowballs into, I had this moment the other day where, one day Isabella might be bullied because of this thing that I did and said about her mother. And I regret the second I hit send.
Did you say it because somebody told you this, or like how did that even come about? Like you saying that?
I mean, honestly, I don't think it's worth giving any more life to, because I've apologized up and down to Michelle. I've apologized to, even putting my friends in that position to have to repeat it. I don't want to put any more life into it.
Has Michelle accepted your apology?
She should not, and probably will never.
Are you and Michelle today on speaking terms?
We are. I mean, we've gotten so close. I mean, we had a moment, in the fall, and you'll see as the season plays out, we were this close, and it's tough. It's a tough ride. And we've had moments where I'll never forget. I got a text message from Michelle, and she's like, Isabella wants both of us to pick her up at school. I said, great, come pick me up at my house. Picked her up at school, and Michelle's like, do you want to go get acai bowls with us? And I'm like, yeah, great. And then she came back here and we watched Moana with Isabella. And it's like, we're right there, and it's just, it's difficult because you get so close, and then one thing happens and you both get triggered, and then you take 2 steps forward, and then it's 30 steps backwards. So we talk, it's going to be hard for her. Like I said, this world, you film it, you have resolution, and then you have to relive it. And, I think it's hard for everybody in our lives to go through that. And we'll get there. We'll get there.
Are you at a place of forgiveness for Danny allegedly being the mole? I think Danny's the mole. Now you could think of somebody else. You could think it's the 21 other. I, Carlos King, think Danny is the mole. He looked guilty. He had, deer caught in the headlights. I believe Danny broke the bro code in a moment of pillow talk. Okay? Because one thing I know, Jesse, men like to gossip too. But men like to gossip when it comes to their ladies because it's a safer space. So, do you think Danny is the mole?
Danny was the mole in this situation, but I will say, boys, if you have a boys chat, use a different goddamn iCloud than you use on your iPad that your kids use to watch Bluey. All right. Like, I don't think anybody's the mole, but goddamn, why do you and your wife share the same iCloud account? So yeah, I mean, look, Danny told me that, and he asked if I was mad about it, and I'm like, no, I'm not mad. It's just another fire that I'll have to put out, and you can't be mad at somebody if you take your own accountability for your actions, right? Danny didn't say it, I didn't spread it, I said it, and I regret it, and it's not Danny's fault. It's
You are a
Danny's
good
fault.
man.
It's a little Danny's fault.
I'm gonna say, I think it's fine, but to me, it's sort of just. I do shows about relationships, right? So I know when it comes to couples that, and there's something wrong with this, but when you are in a relationship, men do pillow talk, and it is what it is. But I thought it was more comedy that Danny looked so like shit. I got caught up. He looked dead into the camera. So to me, it was sort of like, man, you're guilty. Just be honest about it. But I'm happy that is Danny still in the group chat though?
Uh, Danny was Danny didn't last long after that.
Oh, you kicked him out?
I'm not the administrator on the group chat. You know what I mean? I can't confirm or deny Danny's on the group chat. All right, we'll leave it at that. And you're talking about pillow talk. It kind of looked like Luke and Danny were having pillow talk in that moment. I don't know if it was Danny and Nia. It looked like Danny and Luke were having a little cuddly pillow talk. So hey, to each their own.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, listen, I love that this conversation is about you clearing the air. I did hear a rumor, a little bit of information about your past that I would like you to address. You ready for this, Jesse?
Yeah.
Is it true you dated Anna Nicole Smith?
It is not true that I dated Anna Nicole. It is true that we had a relationship, but we weren't dating.
Have you watched a documentary on Netflix?
I have, yeah, I have. I did not get called to give any feedback, but yeah, I did watch it.
Good to know. Listen, you're a legend. You're a legend. Not too many people can say that. May she rest in peace. I mean, listen, she has taste. You're a handsome guy. And I want to say this. I'm happy we have this conversation because I can tell by it there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of maturity. And I do feel like you're somebody who is on this path to just try to figure things out. And although as a reality star, like all of the stars on reality television, you may go about it different ways, but I do feel like you are somebody that lives in the moment. And once you see yourself reflected on television, I do feel like you use that as an opportunity to do better. So I do want to applaud you for that. I know it's a tough business. The audience can be very tough, but I do appreciate that you have not allowed it to, crash out on social media. So I just want to say, continue to do what you're doing. You are a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous addition to the show. I'm obsessed with it. I'm looking forward to more things with you. So is there anything you want to talk to the audience about? You got promoting stuff where they can find you, follow you, support anything you're doing.
Yeah, you can follow me on everything at Jesse Lally, Jesse, not IE, JESSELALLY. You can follow Isabella on Instagram as well, Isabella Lally. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an exciting season for, I think, everybody. We're going to have a reunion this year, which everybody knows about, which is going to be exciting. My first time on the chair. We have, Watch What Happens Live coming up, which is going to be fun. I did it last year, but this year it'll be, it's a different stage to be on. But yeah, I'll leave you with this. People ask me all the time if reality is real. And the truth is, human nature, you throw a lot of things under the rug, right? And it's like, oh, she drank 2 bottles of Sauvignon Blanc. Ha ha ha. I can't believe she said that. But you have to realize that, we're put in positions where you have to think about it for 3 or 4 days until you see somebody again and you're like, wow, I can't believe she said that. How does that affect my career and my family and my future? And you're put in a position to have hard conversations that the majority of people brush under the rug. And I think what you'll learn from reality TV and what you should take into your own life is that have those hard conversations, because like the audience, I can, accuse Michelle of being an escort, but eventually if you take accountability for your actions and you have the hard conversation, it's going to disappear eventually, right? But if you let it simmer and simmer and simmer, you're going to have happen what happened to Michelle and I. Michelle and I had conversations for 2 years about separating, got a new house, swept the dust under the rug, and then had to have those hard conversations. And if you don't have them now, it will destroy you and eat you alive.
That's very true. That's very true. So listen, we're looking forward to the rest of the season and Raindrops. You can catch the Valley every single Tuesday on Bravo and then the next day on Peacock. Jesse, thank you for stepping into Reality with the King, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. You are the king. Thank you so much for having me.